Hello, my name is Trevor, and for my presentation, I'll be going over the private prison industry. So, I want to start off by going over what is meant by private prisons. So, a private prison is a for profit prison where people are imprisoned by a third party contracted by a government agency. Keyword here is for profit, is being done for money, and in that is where the main issue with the industry lies. So, I want to start off by going over the actual rise of the prison industry, private prison industry, and to kind of go over how it started. Starting off, private jails, prisons, and detention centers have a long history in the U.S. as far back as even 1852. This is when San Quentin was the first for-profit prison in the U.S. long before it was actually state-owned. Then a resurgence actually occurred in private prisons, which came in the wake of widespread privatization that took place during the 1980s. This correlated exactly with the war on drugs. No surprise there, as during this time, prison populations actually soared. And then through this, prison overcrowding and rising costs then both became contentious political issues, and this is where private prisons actually came to swoop in. They offered a solution of giving extra space to hold those extra prisoners that were overcrowding at a cheaper cost, and actually with better facilities and better workers, which we know, while they claim that, we know it actually did not pan out that way. And this is actually when the era of privately run prisons effectively began. So let's go over the major players in the industry. So here's the top three right here. Number one being the Corrections Corporation of America, then the GEO Group, previously known as Wackenhut Securities. Lastly, Management and Training Corporation. So just to put into perspective how widespread these companies are, just the Corrections Corporation of America alone owns more than 65 correctional facilities in the U.S. and houses over 100,000 inmates. So now I want to go into why private prisons are a social issue. So the reason why it's a social issue is because the more prisoners a company houses, the more it gets paid. So the issue with this is that they want to get as many prisoners in as they can, hold them for as long as they can. On top of this, it creates a major conflict of interest because prisons are meant to rehabilitate prisoners to put them back into society better than the way they came in. And they don't want to do this here with private prisons because if they rehabilitate prisoners, they are not getting that extra revenue if the recidivism rate is up. They get those prisoners back in again. They're actually making more revenue having them repeat offenders and such as that to get more money off of them. And on top of this, they can actually use these prisoners as cheap labor, outsourcing them to other companies, basically as a form of slavery, using them to create more revenue for themselves at the cost of basically hardly anything for these companies to buy these prisoners. And so basically, this is what's happening. The prisons are making money off of the prisoners themselves just for having them there. They are then also making profits off of using these prisoners as slave labor for other companies and such. So they're making double the profits. And some may say, well, it saves taxpayers money, so it's okay. They're prisoners. It's what they're not meant to have a great time in prison. You can believe that, sure, but a study by the U.S. Bureau of Statistics actually found that there's actually no such savings when you compare public and private prisons. The reason being is that many of these prisons actually won't accept certain expensive prisoners. They will actually refuse them, take in the cheaper ones, and the effect of this is actually artificially deflating the costs associated with running a private jail. So they try to get as many as of they can of the prisoners who cost the least amount to actually hold, while making the most amount in the process, using them for labor and such as that to make the most money off of them. So public perception of this issue. So as I said before, many actually believe it helps save taxpayers money, which is why some that actually know about it support it. If they don't look into it and don't realize the truth of it. On top of this, also the fact that many in the U.S. actually don't know this is even happening. There's not a widespread issue across the U.S., despite it actually having key effects on the mass incarceration in America and the detaining of migrants at the border, which I'll go into right now. So actually, Trump has taken a pro-private prison stance as of late. His administration has actually supported financially during his campaign by this industry, and in turn, now many of these companies are actually holding the detained migrants at the border. So basically, they're scratching Trump's back, Trump's scratching their back, etc. And so, what can be done? Well, the main way to create change is to make the issue more public. It's not in a public issue spot right now. It can definitely use some more attention. On top of this, we must hold the government and these companies who are funding this industry accountable. And lastly, we must vote people into positions of power that oppose the industry. We may not be able to do something alone directly since it's such a government-based issue, but we can definitely change it by putting people into these positions that can actually propose change, propose new legislation to keep this industry from becoming such a huge part of American society and the American justice system. Because in turn, that will help the other issues such as mass incarceration and many other issues with keeping these prisoners in prisons for such small reasons for as long as they can, and maybe help with some of the other justice issues. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, thank you guys.